Community versus corporate behavior. We're in the East Village. It thrives here. There's the most amount of community gardens in the East Village. Probably the most bike lanes, the most people on bicycles. The most community of behavior is right just where I happen to live.
How did Time's Up come into being? How did it form? What was inspiration?
It was kind of my idea. It wasn't so much environmental groups around, so I kind of was just getting out of college. Just dawned on me, who's really suffering? You know, if people are going to behave like this, screw people. The idea is who's really suffering is the environment, like the water, the trees, the air, the animals especially. So,
were there any groups that inspired you at the time?
Sure. You know, Earth First, Greenpeace. I probably didn't know about the Sea Shepherd at the time. I found like some literature about the Sea Shepherd, and they were out there in this boat, and they were like challenging these whale boats. I was like, oh, this is the greatest thing. And I read the book from head to, you know, I read something which I've never done. I just usually don't read anything. I realized that, wow, you know, this is what I'm interested in, the truth, you know, and waking up.
I started getting really more heavily involved in 2006, and I think we started to do like the Pies of March ride. And,
the Pies of March?
Yeah.
And that's in March?
Yeah.
Are there pies?
The Ides of March.
Oh, the Ides of March.
We always use that narrative.
Is it pies or Ides?
We call it the Pies of March.
Oh, okay.
But it's on the Ides of March. We're just twisting the story now.
What do? Do you ride with pies?
Well, yeah, we do a pie fight at the end.
Oh.
So we always make someone in the city that has been the betrayer, right? Like,
who would the betrayer be?
Yeah, like if it was Bloomberg, or if it was Marty Markovich.
Did you pie Bloomberg?
No, we play the roles ourselves.
Oh, okay. So an actor Bloomberg got pied.
Yes.
Does Bloomberg know this?
I don't know.
This neighborhood in the 70s, mailboxes flapped open, front doors were broken, cars were up on blocks, muggings, trash. The buildings went down.
And you were here in the 70s, 80s?
I was here. I was here in the 60s. I was here in the 70s. I was here. I got mugged plenty times. I fought back. See, I fought back. See right there? I fought back. I grabbed the knife. I was here. It was rough, and the cops, they pluck a few people now and then, but mainly they were letting this thing burn down because it served the purpose. There were eyes on the neighborhood to develop the neighborhood. It's close to Midtown. It's close to Wall Street. To them, this was ripe for the plucking, and they wanted to bring in the more affluent people and start charging money, so they let it go, and it went all the way down. But the neighbors who couldn't leave, a lot of them, they reclaimed space, and they created community gardens. So the city came up with an idea. They said, okay, we'll create an agency, Green Thumb, and Green Thumb will provide you with hose, with rakes, with seeds, with shovels, with soil, with compost, truckloads of this and deliveries of that, and you'll sign a lease. Sign a lease for 10 years, 20 years. You can have this space for 20 years, and we'll give you everything you need. Well, 20 years came and went, the 70s, 80s to the 90s. Giuliani came in and he said, I promise that by the end of my administration, I will sell off all vacant city land.
And he was calling it vacant, including the gardens.
When a community garden went up before the community board and then to the city council, it would be called Block 17, Lot 349.
So in late 98, the city announced it was going to auction like 100-something gardens. Were there already gardens that were lost before that sudden outbreak?
Sure. I mean, they went after the squatter gardens first, and they went after those kind of first without announcing it to the public that much. So it seemed like a strategy to me to take away the base. Those are the squats have always been great organizers and working for the community. So they took those gardens out strategically early.
Those first gardens, were there actions to defend them, or did it happen too suddenly?
Well, the activists and the gardeners were two different people, and little by little, the gardeners started trusting the activists more and more, and they realized like you can't really work with the city; they just want to destroy you. So they were all kind of asking for mercy in the beginning, but once they all got together, there was this thing called the eviction watch list that the squatters and the gardeners used, and once one was in danger, everybody would get a call. And it's the idea of working together, much like the unions on strike.
People all over the city got together, and we protested and we rallied and we laid down in the middle of the West Side Highway. We did everything we could to stop the wholesale auctioning of community gardens. It started with an auction that was announced for 113 gardens. The word goes like this: Bette Midler saved the community gardens.
Right.
Right? That's the word.
I kind of wrote that story already.
You got that already. Now, in the times that all this was happening, a group called More Gardens was formed. They were formed in the South Bronx. There was already Green Guerrillas, and there were lots of other groups that were fighting in the legal ways and in legislative ways and through outreach online. But More Gardens also took on the aspect of direct action.
One such direct action that Time's Up and More Gardens was involved in at Esperanza Community Garden around the year 2000. It's up there, where thousands of people got involved to see this garden.
So this was the first garden that was occupied by people before a bulldozer came?
No, there were several, but this was the first one that was really massively done with worldwide outreach. It's called Esperanza.
In 1999, after the perception had spread through the city that the gardens had been saved, it was in August of 1999. There was a real article in the newspaper, in the Daily News, that said, "Garden on East 7th Street up for sale. City to take over." More Gardens created a giant frog. Kids in the neighborhood helped build it, and we painted it, and it was big enough to sleep 3 people. And it was the colors of the coquí, which is this great heroic little creature that lives in Puerto Rico and only Puerto Rico and Hawaii. And it's very tiny, and it's very brave. And so the Puerto Ricans have taken on the coquí as their animal. That's their animal.
And someone was like sleeping in it, like one or two people.
So we had coquí, big puppet coquí made of paper mache and aluminum and mesh. And we could sleep 3.
Did you ever stay in the coquí?
Many times.
Oh, really? So how often were people in there at night?
We opened the coquí in November, and it was February 15th of 2000 when the coquí met her end.
So people through the winter, hello. People through the winter were sleeping in that thing at night.
Yeah, so I kept the sign-up sheet, and I would register whoever wants to sleep in the coquí. Friday night, Saturday night. Okay, we got somebody for Monday. We don't have anybody for Christmas Eve. Okay, Beth's going to stay in the coquí Christmas Eve. So, and that's how it was. And then it got so popular that couples started staying in the coquí. And then that was a date. So in the coldest nights of January, with the icicles dripping off their noses, they'd climb out of the coquí, and they would come down the ladder, and we'd have hot coffee, and Jellicas would donate, and so would Kate Street. They'd donate croissants and all these fancy breakfast pastries, and we'd make the coffee over a fire in a can. And why did we put this coquí in the garden? Because earlier that year, on 11th Street, the Chico Mendez garden was taken.
You mean in '99?
Yeah. Chico Mendez garden was taken that way, that the developers came, the bulldozers came early in the morning, and nobody was watching. So that's why we had a 24-hour watch. So signs up and down the street, no parking at 7 a.m. told us something is up, and then we knew exactly what was up, because there's no way that people were going to be able to know that their cars were going to be towed overnight if the signs went up after dark, after dinner. After
Were cars
they were home.
towed all of a sudden?
So, all night, the beeper of tow trucks, all night long.
We're towing
We heard
cars?
Beep, 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 as they would pull car after car. They took the cars off 7th Street. They took the cars off Avenue C.
Without warning?
They took the cars. The warning was no parking 7 a.m.
But they just put this, you mean they put
They
the
put
signs?
the signs up and then they stole the cars.
Okay.
We knew. So we went into action. We took everything out of the garden. We had a little casita. We had lockdowns everywhere. We had lockdowns. You asked if the developers knew what was happening. We had a tripod with a sunflower up on top of it and a chair.
Where was that?
In the middle, in the little
In Esperanza?
in the back of the garden. Yeah, in Esperanza.
Okay.
We had this giant frog that you could hardly miss. I mean, there was one night.
And other people were locked down within the garden.
Then we had, they call sleeping dragons, which is a cement, like a basin, covered with earth, and it has a sleeve in it.
Right. The CPV stuff and all that.
So we had 3 of those. Then we had people walk to the front. Brooke, I don't know if she wants her name is. Brooke was sitting in a chair on the fence, locked down to the chair. People were locked down. People were bicycle locks. People were, arm in arm with each other.
And now was this?
Banging drums,
Was this?
pots
This
and
was
pans.
for months, or this was like in February?
This was the morning of February 15th.
Okay.
Starting around 4 o'clock. Once we got all the stuff out of the garden and we made the phone calls and we got the crowds of defenders to come pouring in, then we started the,
So you're saying like that night when the signs went up along the street,
yeah.
that's when everyone came to the garden and locked down? And,
That's when we started preparing.
okay.
Now, why did it happen? Because that day, because February 15th, the next morning, Elliot Spitzer, Bill probably told you this, Elliot Spitzer had filed a lawsuit on
Right.
behalf of the state of New York against the city for economic discrimination. They didn't call it racial discrimination, they called it economic discrimination. The case was being heard on Tuesday morning, February 15, 2000.
So the day that the trucks came,
So
basically they were still in there.
Giuliani said he went into action. He was going to do a preemptive strike. He was going to take this garden, which was the seat of the resistance at the time. It was the heart and soul of the defense of the gardens of all the city. It was happening right here, right there, 2 blocks away. So meanwhile, 5 o'clock, the big TV channels came in, stations and their transmitters, and they were interviewing us, and people were chanting, and there were crowds and crowds gathering outside the garden, and people were getting into position. And we went up into the Frog and the Coquille, and we locked down. We got into our lockdowns, and Reverend Billy came and he preached to the crowd, and Arish was in the nose of the Frog, and I don't know if you've seen pictures of the Frog, but it had 2 great eyes, plexiglass globes, and you could look out through the eyes, and there we were, 3 of us, locked inside the Frog.
So you were in there on that day?
Yeah, I was in the Frog. And
And who were the other 2 people?
Arish Javadi and Beth Sopko.
Okay.
So Beth and I were locked to the same block. We each had an arm in the same block. We were like wings of the block. And Arish was right in the nose of the Frog, and he was locked like this in the praying position. So he was bent over like that, looking out and talking. Reverend Billy was talking. We were all trying to talk to the police, the white shirts mostly, and the blue shirts, and said, to the police, you don't have to do this. Your children need this too. You don't have to do this. But they did. Anyway, Giuliani sent the cops in, took the people, pulled us out, burned us out, cut us out, whatever it took.
Burned people out?
They had torches to burn the chains.
Oh, okay. Do you think it actually burned people?
Well, we got sparkled. We got burned. Some of us got burned. And then the last person, she was up by herself 26 feet up in the air in this tripod that had sunflower leaves on it saying in Spanish and English, peace, paz, belleza, comunidad, beauty, food. Each petal of the sunflower had a message in both languages. And there she is, sitting all by herself, 26 feet up in the air. And they got us out of the coquille, and I always say how they did it. The cops came in and they ripped through the left side of the coquille, which was the hard side, and they came breaking through on the side where the coquille's heart would be beating. And they filmed us and then they took us out.
I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but I want to do prayer.
Just a minute. I'm almost done. Almost done. Give me 2 minutes.
Okay, all right.
Took us out.
I just want to get there.
They took us out, and then they took everybody, and then they went to her, and she's sitting by herself way up in the sky. And they said to her, if you come down, we'll back off. But if you make us come up and get you, if you put us through that, we're definitely going to destroy this garden.
These are cop games.
Cop games. So she did what she thought was right to save the garden.
She stayed up
So they
there.
got her.
Because how do you know if they're telling the truth, right?
They got her. They got her. She's still in pain about it. It wasn't her fault. It was going to happen. They were going to come and get her. They just wanted to save themselves a little extra effort. After they got us out, this great crane came out from the top and it smashed the coquille like that. The coquille went flat. 20 minutes later, the case appeared in front of the judge, and the judge said, "What? What? They took the garden?" He was so furious. The judge slapped a temporary restraining order against the city of New York right then and there. There were 3 successive temporary restraining orders. Giuliani left, Bloomberg came. Meanwhile, the day of the arrest, Giuliani was running for senator against Hillary Clinton. And Hillary Clinton gets on TV and she says, "You can't bulldoze your way to the Senate."
All the actions that were happening, there was a lot of lobbying and direct actions in public, but some other groups ended up buying the gardens. So what was the ultimate result of those other actions, the public demonstrations?
Once it got to that level of media attention, everything seemed to be okay. Groups like Trust for Public Land or Green Thumb, groups came in and raised money to help save the gardens. But it was really the direct action of community members. There's a lockdown on the floor over there where people actually locked down to save the gardens and surrounded trees and stuff. So this is what turns up.
So the media attention helped save other gardens?
Sure, because then once it became evident and the film was out there, the video was really important that showed the city destroying the gardens.
So there were more gardens saved than those 120.
Yeah, there are probably like 1,000 gardens saved by direct action. Giuliani wanted to destroy every single garden. I mean, that's what he said. I mean, I'm not making that stuff up.
And he said you were communists.
I don't know about that. Can we cut that off?
Or living in the age of communism.
And he said, these people have to be realistic.
Right.
Garden. You have to be realistic. Come on, garden.
And then he said, like, if it was a communist age or something.
Something. Socialist communist.
Right.
Temporary restraining orders, so you can't touch any gardens, lasted for 2 years. 2.5 years. 2.5 years. In the meantime, we sat down, the Attorney General's office sat down with the new mayor's office, new mayor's administration, came up with a settlement. The settlement actually outlined a way for gardens to be permanent. The coquille was here.
Oh, this was Esperanza?
This was Esperanza.
Whoa.
The coquille was blooming over this fence right here, like this.
How many gardens are there now around here in this neighborhood?
50 maybe?
50?
I can't remember exactly.
Are any of them new or they're all pretty old?
Oh, most of them have been here for a
Generation?
Yeah.
A while.
Since the 90s. Most of them.
Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah?
The 35 gardens that were on the extinction list, more gardens moved our headquarters to the South Bronx because there was a whole cluster of gardens up there.
Oh, More Gardens, the group.
Yeah. We were
I
down
see.
here throughout the whole time. With
So
our
you were
gardens.
organizing with the More Gardens
Yeah.
people?
Right.
Right.
And Time's Up and More Gardens together really worked hard to fight for the gardens of the South Bronx.
Oh, I see.
And to save as many of those, and they were like lost cases. They were told there was no way that they could keep their garden. And some of them lost their gardens, but the city gave them another space.
Why did you end up organizing with More Gardens as opposed to Time's Up?
Because I walked in and Arish said, draw me a coquille.
When did you ever get involved with Time's Up in particular?
I used to see both Arish and Bill Capallo at wetlands meetings back in the early 90s, and I did not know to get involved with either of them, you know. I just knew they were there.
You're just like kind of acquaintances with them?
Yeah.
And you went to the meetings at
And
Wetlands?
then living around here, Critical Mass, and knowing Bill and knowing Wendy.
Did you ride in Critical Masses?
Yeah,
Do you still ride in Critical Masses?
sometimes.
Sometimes?